Okay, there we are. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Tapping into Life podcast. It is so good to know that each and every one of you are continuing the journey to self discovery, spiritual identity, trauma, and healing, and identifying all that is bad that we need to fix and all that is good that we need to maintain and embrace. Welcome to the Tapping into Life podcast. I am your spiritual life coach, Matthew B. And we are here again for yet another beautiful, juicy conversation. Okay. So come on in, come on in. Grab your pad and your pen, grab your drink and your snack, sit back, relax, and enjoy. Because today's topic is going to be a very juicy topic. Okay. It ain't the tea. We ain't spilling the tea. We just giving information and knowledge to help each and every one of you, as including myself, to maneuver through this journey called life and know everything that we have to be aware of. Okay. So we're going to get right into it. But before we get right into it, remember to share, tell tell a friend to tell five more friends, and those five more friends tell 20 more friends. Okay. Because this is juicy information we're going to be talking about today. So we need, so everybody needs this information. And so when they receive this information, they can apply it to themselves as individuals. Okay. So today's topic, it took me about a week to really make sure I had all the information. And I came to the conclusion that this topic can be a rabbit hole conversation. You know how you go when, Alice in Wonderland, she fell down a rabbit hole. She kept going and going and going and going and going and going and going. And it seemed like it never stopped. It never ended. And this is one of those topics, that it just keeps going and going and going and going and going and going and going. And it's also like a spider web conversation because it could lead to other subtopics revolving around this one center topic. So what I'm going to do, I am going to focus on the topic at hand. Right. So my discipline needs to, I prayed and meditated on my discipline that, God would light up my discipline and help me enact my activate, I'm sorry, my discipline, because I really want to focus on this topic. And God knows that I'm the type of person I can go from this topic and hit these subtopics, and I don't want to do that because it's not going to get the central message across. So I'm going to do my best to focus on this topic. All right. So have any of you all, and if you haven't experienced what I'm about to ask, pretty sure you will somewhere down the line, right? Have any of you all experienced moments where you are asking yourself, who am I? What am I here for? Um, what do I have to offer to the world? What do I have to offer to people? What do I have to utilize as it pertains to my purpose in life? Like, who am I as an individual? Right? Have y'all asked yourself when you really look at who you are, or certain things that you know about yourself, you ask that question like, how does this play a part in what my journey in life? right? Or have any of you ever been at a crossroad where it's like the fork in the road? You don't know if you didn't go straight, bear to your right, bear to your left, and in that time of your life, you're just stuck, and you are trying your best to figure out what move to make, which way to go, and how to go about it, and which direction to go. Have any of you ever experienced that? And if any of you have, I'm here to tell you it is okay to experience that. And that's what we call a moment of pause or the plateau. Because you feel like you're not going anywhere. You feel like you're stuck. You're not dead, but you feel like you're stuck. You feel like you just can't move like you want to move. You know, you're doing this thing called life, and you're figuring stuff out, but you get at that moment, you're like, it's something that I'm not seeing, and because I'm not seeing, I can't move. That is what we call a moment of pause. And sometimes, well, a lot of times that moment of pause does not come from you not putting in the effort. Sometimes that moment of pause comes from you just simply don't know, right? We all know that we're born into this world not knowing everything, okay? I'm gonna keep it real with you. Like, we all know that, we are born into this world. We don't know everything, right? I got a lot of people that say, well, Matthew, you know, it's like you're so smart, you know so much. I'm like, I don't know everything, right? And a lot of stuff that I know, okay, I'm trying to get my head wrapped together, and it is not doing the business. A lot of stuff that I know, it took years to come up with to find this knowledge. It took years to apply this wisdom. I didn't come out the room knowing everything. But when you get, like I said, that moment of pause, it's just like, because you don't know, right? And some of us fear making the wrong move, and that's a natural response, right? That's a natural response. Like, I want to make sure I'm making the right move, but I don't know. I know some of you all have experienced that. And what I'm going to tell you all, I'm going to bring forth something in the 3 seasons that I have been doing this podcast. It has finally come to my attention, right? I'm finally able to come up with an answer that may help a lot of you keep going. A lot of us have looked in the mirror, in that spiritual mirror of ours, right? A lot of us have looked or took a moment to breathe, and we just ask ourselves, who am I? Who am I as a human on this earth, maneuvering through this journey called life? Who am I? What makes me happy? Some of us don't even know what make us happy, right? I have had experience where, putting myself out there, talking to people, getting to know people, and I'm asking, well, what makes you happy? And they don't know. What makes you sad? And they don't know. What makes you angry? but they don't know. And it isn't until they experience a moment and the effect of that moment manifests as a feeling or emotion. So I'm going to break it down to y'all. All right. You ready? All right. We're 11 minutes in. So there's this thing called, and this defines our existence on this earth, right? We all know that we're a spiritual existence inhabiting a human body, right? So the human body is on the earth. That's the flesh, that's the skin and the organs and all of those things. Then we have, the spiritual existence, right? So the spiritual existence, how can I put this? The spiritual existence, this is where your feelings come into place. This is where your emotions come into place. This is where, the presence or lack of love, the presence or the lack of hate, the presence or the lack of happiness, those spiritual traits, those spiritual characteristic traits. That's in your spiritual atmosphere, right? But then there's this thing that the human form of us operates by, right? So with the spiritual existence of ourselves comes the human manifestation of ourselves. It's like yin and yang, right? For our IT people, our IT techs out there, it's like two servers trying, communicating with each other. Your spiritual existence communicates with something on this earth as it pertains to just you, the individual. And a lot of us think, oh, well, our spiritual existence connects with our flesh. Not quite. So the question is, what do our spiritual existence communicate with? What does it work with to produce something? And what is that something? And I'm going to tell you what that something is, right? This is exciting. What your spiritual existence or your spiritual atmosphere communicates with is what we call humanness. 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 Right? So, Matthew, what is humanness? Humanness is the condition or quality of being human. The condition or quality of being human. So, my humanness is my conditions or qualities of me being a human form on this earth. What are the conditions, right? The conditions can be my race, conditions or quality. It could be my race, right? It could be whatever race that you were born. You were born of a certain race, of a certain ethnicity. You were born of a certain gender. You were born in a certain environment. You were conditioned by whatever spiritual or religious belief. You were conditioned by perception. Ooh. there are some good things, some beneficial and detrimental things that you were conditioned by that helped form your humanness. So the race of your parents, under the conditions that both of your parents are a certain race or multiple races, would be your humanness. That would be the condition. So because that condition is two races, now some of you may be born biracial. Or if it's two individuals of the same race, then you're born that one race. Right? So it's the condition or quality. What quality help condition your humanness? And I understand that in my journey, I really am realizing that a lot of us don't know our humanness. We're unable to tap into our true humanness. And the question may be, well, why are we so, why are we so blind to our humanness? Because you have to understand your humanness is based off the quality and condition. If your parents, or if some of you were raised, in single parent homes like myself, if that parent wasn't well off and that parent lived in, a rough neighborhood or what we call the hood, whether they lived in the city, whether they, they had, they were well off and they lived in the suburbs in a nice 4-bedroom house. I don't know. Those are the conditions. So your humanness is impacted by the condition or quality of the condition. Right? Some of us, were born in the projects. Some of us were born in big cities like New York, and some of us were born in little country areas like I was, little small town, little country area around that. And for whatever reason, those conditions existed. For whatever reason, right? For whatever reason, our parents had a moment where they fell in love with each other, whether they still married, whether they're, not together anymore. They had that, but for whatever reason, right? And a lot of us dwell on the reasoning behind why we're here, but don't ask ourselves, what are the conditions that are created to make up our humanness? Our humanness is our existence. So I'm going to use myself. I'm male, born in the 90s, African American and Native American, 33 years old. And I'm not telling y'all my weight. That's my humanness. That's part of my humanness. That's part of who I am. Right? That's part of who I am. Those are facts. Any day of the week, we can prove that fact that Matthew was born on January 31st, 1991. And his parents are two individuals who are Black and Native American. He was born in the early 90s, and his gender is a male. Those are facts that anybody can prove. You can look at the birth certificate, everything. So when we say humanness, many of us don't know our individual conditions or quality. That puts a halt in us on this journey to identify who we truly are, not just on the outside, but also on the inside. Right? This in return blocks our individual selves from fully understanding the direction of where we need to go and to start within our journey. Some of us start the journey and we got enough information and we get to this pause in the road, this fork in the road. Some of us we can't even start the journey. Some of us can't even start the journey because we don't know, we're not aware of our true humanness. Right? So a lot of us, and this is where I'm going to acknowledge the rabbit holes, but we're not going to jump down the rabbit holes. Many of us don't want to acknowledge and or accept our individual conditions or qualities. Many of us do not want to acknowledge and or accept our individual conditions or qualities. You have no control over who gave birth to you. You know, when you're this spiritual existence before you pop out the womb of, of a woman, you can't choose what mother or what parent and the conditions of their love for one another, or lack thereof. You can't decide that, right? You don't want to accept, you don't want to accept the fact that, some of us have these stories where we have these thoughts to where, okay, I want a different mommy, I want a different daddy, because, I'm so angry at this one that these ain't working over here. Right? But the thing about it is, that is a condition that helped create your humanness. And a lot of us do not want to acknowledge things of that nature. A lot of us don't want to acknowledge, or accept, because some of us, we acknowledge it, but we ain't accepting that. But it's a fact any given day of the week. For example, if someone was born in a low-income neighborhood, there are some people who are like, well, I don't want to accept the fact that I was, born and raised into some low-income neighborhood. Well, damn, what can you do about that? What can you do about the fact that for whatever reason, mommy and or daddy did not have the income to buy this big luxurious house, but made it do what it do and did everything they could to make ends meet. And the only thing they could afford in that moment was low income neighborhood. So you were born in, you were raised in the project. You can't do anything about that. That's factual information. Ain't nothing you can do to change about that. It is what it is. And some of us, who are in those moments, listening and hearing a lot of stuff, a lot of people tell their stories and or whatnot, a lot of us can't accept, if we, a lot of people who had experienced that, they can't accept that. Oh, I'm not going to accept the fact that I was raised in the projects. Well, kid, you were. That's your humanness. That's the condition and form in helping to form who you are, who you are. That's your humanness. You know, I'm going to acknowledge a rabbit hole, a couple of them. The first one being that, someone begins to tap into their humanness, whatever part of their humanness, I'm going to say gender, and some people are like, I'm not that gender. I'm not that gender. I may have that anatomy, but I'm not that gender. And they begin to go through this, this thing called transitioning, you know. And a lot of our um, transgender brother and sisters have experienced that moment where they tap into that part of their humanness and be like, that ain't it. It ain't it. Right? But I realize that when it comes to things like that, so when they are experiencing that moment where I just don't feel right, identifying or accepting that part of my humanness. Now, once upon a time, one could honestly say that that couldn't be changed. Now, we come to this conclusion, or we're coming into this revelation that humanness can be changed. It's just certain things of humanness that can't be changed. So now when it comes to people who are transgender, they can change their gender. you know. And I understand that some of y'all keep y'all negative comments to yourselves, okay? I understand some of y'all got different beliefs and opinions about, transgender and the whole uh entirety of it. And we're not gonna sit up there and go down that rabbit hole. So I'm just giving y'all a rabbit hole and we gonna move on. All right. But I'm using it as an example as someone beginning to tap into their humanness. Now, there's some things that can't be changed, right? There's some things that can't be changed. Now, another rabbit hole is we have some people who are born of a certain race, but then somewhere later on in life, they say, you know what, I don't identify as this race. And see, the thing about not accepting or accepting your humanness, when we don't accept our humanness, though that factual information, mind you, before I go on, that factual information are there temporarily, right? They are there temporarily, or however long you want that part of your humanness to exist. Now, my thing is, and like I said, this is a rabbit hole situation, and this is a spider web situation. So you're falling down a hole with spider webs. Okay, we have to understand, just because one or a group of people accept certain parts of their humanness that they have in common with each other, and then someone else come along and say, okay, my humanness now, well, my humanness is saying, okay, yeah, it's similar to y'all's, but I'm not going to accept or acknowledge that. Well, I've acknowledged it, but I'm not going to accept it. That doesn't mean that it's self-hate, right? Because a lot of us, we like to say, oh, well, that's self-hate, that's self-hate. And then they go and they, look up stuff and they try to come up with some mental illness and all of that stuff like that. That doesn't mean that that person hates themselves. That simply means that for whatever reason, right? For whatever reason, they decided not to accept that humanness about themselves for whatever reason. Right. And like I said, we're not going to go down this rabbit hole, this of spider webs, because I know that some of us say, well, this is this and 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 this. Look, okay, cool. Y'all do y'all. All right. If y'all need to write that part down and come up with a topic at your own leisure time, y'all go ahead and do that in your own leisure time. All right. Y'all set up a YouTube channel with the stream, y'all have a whole discussion about that. But we're not going to do that today. So humanness within oneself consists of nothing but facts as it pertains to an individual's existence. However, some of these facts can change. I don't care what the beliefs are of certain people. I'm not even gonna say that. All right, no, because I'm literally about to do what I said I was not going to do and jump down a rabbit hole. I am not about to do that. I am not about to do that. All right, though I know how to come out of that rabbit hole and shake them spider webs out. I'm not going to do that. We're not doing that. Okay, we're gonna move on. All right. So different examples of humanness, right? Factual information that help construct someone's human existence, or the conditions of, gender, male, female, non-binary, whatever race. All right. You were born of a certain race. You were born, and raised in a particular environment, whether that be, what people call the hood, whether that be in the country, the suburbs, the big city, like a lot of us, a lot of y'all, like in New York or whatever. That's part of your humanness. That's factual information. That's, if you were raised in the city, you can't change the fact that you were raised in the city. If you were raised in the hood, you can't change the fact that you were raised in the hood. Now, the thing about it is, we need to understand what things that can be changed and what things that cannot be changed, and understand that our humanness is only factual. Well, some parts of our humanness are only factual temporarily. So that, you may have been raised in the hood as a child, but as an adult, will you continue to live in the hood? That is your choice. But if you choose to move out the hood and come on down to the good old country, then your humanness, part of your humanness changes. Right? So your humanness doesn't, it helps shape the formation of your present and your future, but it doesn't necessarily dictate it. And we're going to get to all of that later on, right? Another thing is you can be a human existence on this earth and may experience certain things, right? So you experience living in, the country, the hood, the city, okay? You experience or you experience abuse, whether it was your parent being abused or you being abused, right? You are experiencing that. All right. You are a person who experienced depression and all of that yuckiness, transitioning, being rewarded, being loved, being hated. You've experienced that. That helps shape your humanness. Right? And when you talk about being loved, that's where your spiritual existence overlays or what's the word? What's the proper word? Not overlay, but intertwines with your humanness. Right? We're gonna, so like I said, they're yin and yang. So what one pours into the other pours into that one. Yin and yang, give or take, push and pull. So when we're looking at humanness, although some of the facts may not be in our favor, acknowledging all facts help us move through this journey. Right? So this is the conditions of a journey, basically. That's your humanness. This is the condition of the journey. This is how the journey is going to go based on these conditions, based on these experiences, based on how you were created as a human and what the spiritual aspect of you and the physical aspect of you, how they're intermingling with each other. Right. Those are the conditions. Under these conditions, this is how your spiritual journey is going to go. Basically. All right. Put it all in a nutshell. Once we acknowledge all the facts, we can now assess our feelings towards the facts. We assess by using our mental. That's how we acknowledge things, using our mental. We respond based on how controlled our emotions are. But once your mental and your emotion begin to yin and yang, again, yin and yang each other, we develop feelings. How do I feel being born and having these conditions? That is my humanness. How do I feel about my humanness? Right? How do I feel about me being a male? How do I feel about me being a female? How do I feel about me being a particular race? How do I feel about, the environment I was raised in? How do I feel about experiencing both fortunate and unfortunate events? How do I feel about having a whole Lemony Snicket's moment where, Half my life I had good and half my life I did bad. How do we feel? Right? And it's okay to feel. Don't suppress your feelings. It's okay to feel. So these feelings, okay, all right, here's what we're going to get into it, determines one's human nature, not humanness. Humanness is the condition and quality, right? Your spiritual existence is what you possess and what you lack. Together, they communicate, and based off communication, now gives you your human nature. So the nature in where you respond, the nature of human beings, including ways of thinking, feeling, and acting. How do you respond based on the yin and yang of your spiritual existence and your humanness? Do have y'all realized? I'm going to bring this to you, some of you that don't. Have y'all realized that some of us die more spiritual and don't know our humanness? And then some of us die more humanness and don't know our spiritual. Do you all not realize that you have to identify both, because both are working to produce this thing called human nature, right? I'm gonna tell you something about human nature. Human nature is these, those are the seeds of your total self. All right. Those are the seeds of your total self. All of you can be found in your human nature, even things that are spiritual, because you remember spiritual feeds in, spiritual is yin and yang with your humanness. Together, they produce the human nature. The human nature is the product of factual information in the spiritual aspect of you and the humanist aspect of you, right? So that human nature is basically the physical manifestation of that, basically the fruit of what you got going on as far as it pertains to your humanness, your individual humanness, and your individual spirit, right? So this is the seeds, right? This is the fruit. So where a lot of us, where we practice different spiritual practices and we hear fruit, this is the human nature. Okay, so I know that everybody does not uh 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 what's the word, I just slipped. Everybody does not define God as Christians define God. However, when he speaks of fruit, or in Christianity, when we speak of fruit, we're speaking human nature. Your human nature has to possess certain fruits, right? So if your humanness and your spiritual existence, your spiritual atmosphere, if they come together and give you something that is, ugh, that means your human nature is going to be, ugh. So if there's not love in your spirit because your humanness didn't create that space for love to exist by way of whomever, parents, family, friends, whomever, then your human nature is going to be a human nature without love, right? If your humanness and your spiritual atmosphere say we always got to stay on the fence. We always got to stay on the fence. Get ready, okay? We always got to be that fighter. Your human nature is going to be always fighting. So to be honest with you, you can tell a lot about a person. Just like in Christianity, they say you can tell a lot about a person by the fruit that they bear. You can tell a lot about a person by their human nature, because that's the exact same thing. You can tell a lot about a person if you hear the spiritual language tell you about one's human nature. All right. So the nature of human beings, including ways of thinking, feeling, and acting. So your response to things. Right. And so and I have a couple of questions. Do you know the entirety of your human nature? Do you? And I'm gonna ask that, and I really want us to focus on the entirety of our human nature, because a lot of stuff that we do results, in based on trauma, right? It's an effect of trauma. Our humanness experienced trauma. Our spiritual existence not embrace. Our spiritual existence possesses the hurt and the pain. So together, we do things in our human nature as a result of trauma. Not all the time, but sometimes. But what I really want you to focus on is that sometimes we can do things that we think is just normal. It's just us. It's just who we are. No harm, no foul. But it's actually harm and foul, because it says a lot about you as an individual. And what has happened is because we have redefined the definition of trauma, a lot of our traumatic experience have gone under the rug and have been stepped on and buried. And we just walk over it. We don't address it. So in return, we do, our human nature consists of silent traumatic effects. STAs, silent traumatic effects. Right? And I'm going to do an episode on trauma. All right. We're doing an episode on trauma, but that's another rabbit hole of spider webs. So we got to understand the full entirety, 100% of our human nature. Because when we understand our humanness and our spiritual existence, we understand the human nature, and we begin to. So if our human nature ain't where we want it to be, if we're doing some things that, are hindering us or putting us at a pause, we need to assess our humanness and our spiritual existence. Because 9 times out of 10, both of them got some inadequacies, or there's some discrepancies from the real who we are existence. I hope y'all understand where I'm coming from. Hope y'all understand where I'm coming from. And by all means, type questions in the comments and I'll answer, or, hey, you ask and you shall receive. You need some clarity, I'll give you clarity. Do you know why your human nature is the way it is? And basically, we've answered that question, you know. However, your spiritual existence, but the conditions of your spiritual existence and the condition of your humanness is the reason why your human nature is the way it is. Good and bad, good and or bad. How one handles or deal with the humanness and the spiritual existence dictates the human nature. So basically, if you are not going on this journey to possess, to assess that you lack love, self-love, or love in general, and you don't put in the time to go on this journey and possess love, then your human nature will be a human nature of no love, and it will show. Right? How your human nature and your spiritual existence is carried out by way of your, no, how your human nature is carried out by way of your humanness. Oh, okay. All right. I can't read my own writing. So basically, another point. Basically, what I've been saying all the show, right? So we're not even gonna go on now. All right, we're not even gonna go on now. All right, but no. I want us to understand humanness and human nature and spirit. You know, humanness and the connection with humanness and our spiritual existence, and how they yin and yang one another, how they read off of one another, how they complement one another. That's the word, complement one another, how they communicate with one another. You know, it's like two lovebirds. You know, the communication is strong. We find the chemistry in each other. We go and we got a seed. And that's all that our human nature is. And we got to understand that when we wake up in the morning and we were ready to punch the first person in the face, you know, punch somebody in the face that says something sideways, that says a lot about our human nature. And in return, that says a lot about our humanness and our spirit and our spiritual atmosphere. If we wake up in the morning and we got that patience and that grace, that says a lot about our human nature. It says a lot about our spiritual existence. If we always feeling down and depressed, and we having this depressed moment, that says a lot about our humanness and our spiritual existence, our spiritual atmosphere. That's it. You know, why am I so sad? Right? Why am I so angry? Or acknowledging, oh, I just love, like, why am I wake up in the morning and I just feel so happy and I just want to love everybody? And you know, you got to look at your humanness and also look at your spiritual atmosphere. So because they complement one another. Right? So I want all of us to begin focusing not just on our spiritual atmosphere or what we got going on mentally and emotionally, but also understand that there are conditions to our spiritual atmosphere, and these same conditions are the conditions to who we are as humans. And this better understand, and you will better understand the importance of grace or giving someone grace, right? And to learn somebody's humanness is to see, well, is to have a conversation based on the results of their human nature. So if someone's human nature ain't, it's okay to have a conversation with someone and say, hey, sugar, come here for a minute, baby. Come here. Or, hey, bro, come on. We need to have a talk. What's going on? I want to like you as a person, but I got some stuff going on with me. Well, what's going on with you? It's a happy, beautiful day, sun shining, birds chirping. Why are you so angry all the time? A lot going on, this, that, and the third, and blah, 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 blah. And you have that conversation and you unpeel the layers and you begin to see somebody's humanness and also see what one may be possessing or lacking within their spirit. Just by having a conversation with them. Y'all, let me tell you, you can learn a lot when you're able to hear spirituality and able to identify spiritual language. You can learn a lot from a person. You can really learn a lot from a person. Well, how can I learn spiritual language? By having a good human nature. I mean, by having a good human nature. And the thing about it is, when I say good human nature, that doesn't mean that you are sin and error free. That does not mean that you don't make mistakes. You don't get ready. You don't have those days where you want to punch somebody in the face. You don't have those moments where you just don't want to talk to somebody because somebody done pissed you off. You don't have those moments where you feeling all down and dumb. You don't have those moments where you just want to give up on life. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is a good human nature is the product of you taking the journey and putting in the effort to weed out the bad, heal the hurt, and embrace and maintain the good. That's where your spiritual language come in, because that spiritual language helps direct you. It's called grace. It's called discipline. It's called love. It's called peace. It's called understanding. It's called faith. It's called trust. It's called so many things. And what we have to also understand before we get out of here, what we also have to understand is that human nature are the seeds that the soul nurtures. Highlight that. I want y'all to focus on that as well. Human nature, your human nature are the seeds that you plant in your soul. Your soul is just the garden that produces the fruit. So I am a seed. I plant a seed in my garden. Plants come up, and what they do, they produce the fruit. And the fruit is a mirror of my human nature. Just in your spare time, do some research, meditate, pray, fast, whatever it is y'all got to do. But I want y'all to understand. I want y'all to understand, if we understand our humanness, and if we understand our spiritual atmosphere, allergies, we would understand why our human nature is the way it is. Because when we go and we try to correct, we have a habit of correcting one of the three, but not assessing all three and correcting all three. Conditions are going to be conditions. How you deal with those conditions are is how you deal with those conditions is your human nature. Now, you can let those conditions dictate your present and your future, or you can begin that journey. You begin that journey on change and self-discovery, right? And the things that can't be changed, use them to your advantage. How many of us have been born into races that once upon a time life wasn't in their favor, right? You have Native Americans, you have African Americans, you have oh shoot, Native Americans, African Americans, and I just lost another one. But anyway, but you have especially those two, and you also have Hispanics. The history of these races and the people who were in the history of these races, i.e., our ancestors, our parents, whether they're, even if they're gone, our parents, grandparents, great grandparents, great great grandparents, and so on. And what happened is life was not in their favor. However, you have certain people in those races. You have certain people in the Native American race. You have certain people in the African American race. You have certain people in the Hispanic race. You have certain people in the in the Asian race, and you have certain people in different races, including our Caucasian brothers and sisters. And what happened was the conditions of their humanness, they did not, even if they could not change that, they took those conditions that could not be changed and they used them to their advantage. What one may have deemed a weakness, they identified it as a strength. And in return, that strength was shown not only in their humanness and in their spiritual existence, but it was shown in their human nature. So their human nature goes and plants a seed in the soul, and the soul in return produces the fruit of strength and love and patience and endurance, or endurance, they call it long suffering back then. Assess our human nature and assess our spiritual atmosphere and assess our humanness. Like I said, we focus on one of the three, but we don't focus on all three. And when we are fixing ourselves and maintaining and eliminating some things, we find that all three are the cause of said things that we're assessing. So in your leisure, and I'm pretty sure some of you all will, take the time to identify your humanness, right? And I'm going to do an episode, and the topic will be about trauma, right? Because, like I said earlier in the episode, society has taken the definition of trauma and have downplayed and have changed the definition of trauma, and in return downplayed so many people's experiences in life. And it's showing through their human nature. And we think that it's just normal action, and that, well, that's just him. And it's a result of a silent traumatic effect. That's what it's called. And we as humans, we need to assess if we have, figure out if we have silent traumatic effects, and why are those, silent traumatic effects. If we are operating out of that, we need to figure out why. Because here recently, in next episode, I'm gonna go deep into what I'm about to say. I'm gonna go deeper into it. But I say within the past couple of months, I found that I was operating from a silent traumatic effect. Did not even know it. Wouldn't have thought about it. Would have thought nothing about it. It was just so happened I was doing a podcast episode, and from in season 3, I was doing a podcast episode, and me and the guy was talking. And if y'all actually watched that episode, y'all would know. Me and the guy was talking, and I'm like, well, now that I look at it, as of right now I'm kind of seeing why I do the things that I do. So, but we're going to get into that. All right, we're going to get into that. I want to say next week. I'm not sure, but it'll be within the next couple of weeks. I got to look at the calendar. But it is so good to know that each and every one of you are taking the time to work on you, to love you, to put you first, to fix you if you need to be fixed, and whatever you need to fix. It is so good that each and every one of you are taking the time, not just to watch me on the podcast and talk for an hour plus, but to also fix, maintain what is good in you, identify who you truly are, heal from the trauma. I'm so glad that each and every one of y'all are just taking that time. It makes me happy. We're going to get out of here. And until next week, always remember to continue this journey. Positivity. I speak positivity from now to next week. I speak positivity into all of your lives. I speak prosperity. I speak knowledge and wisdom. I speak the strength, that you all will have the strength to continue on this journey called life, because we all know it ain't peaches and cream and it ain't always sunshine. Sometimes we go through a couple of windstorms and thunderstorms, and sometimes, it's dark and rainy. Sometimes we don't know what direction to go. So I speak that strength and that guiding light into each and every one of y'all. Until next week, be blessed, be positive, be bright.